Hi.
Hey, Nicholas.
Yes, good to be on here again.
Great to have you back.
Right. So for a long time now, I've been dealing with addiction. I would say it's kind of like dopamine addiction, I suppose. It's kind of like, or stimulation or something like that. So it's not really any specific kind because they're just like different forms of the same thing. And I've got this awareness already that it's rooted in guilt ultimately and a sense of incompleteness. And that, okay, so I get this boredom and it's almost like a mental pain. And then I feel an urge to do something or to cover that up or distract myself from it.
To scratch the itch.
That's fun. It gives me a kick or something. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And it might be a YouTube video. It might be smoking or something. There's just a bunch of different things. Now, at the same time, I have a sense that I'm in my comfort zone doing that. And there's stuff I might be putting myself out of my comfort zone by doing that might be more fulfilling, although I'm not the doer, but and it's like I'm avoiding that as well. And there's a fear there, but also guilt underlying it. And then there's a boredom that hurts. And Eckhart Tolle said that boredom, that it's kind of like the pain of not being present. So
yeah.
So I'm aware of this stuff, but I'm still experiencing this addiction. So I don't know how to navigate this, what to resolve inside.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really cool that you're aware that the addiction itself is really just an addiction to sense pleasures in that sense. And, the Vedas, the Sutras, Upanishads, the Buddha all speak about how the mind's craving for sense pleasures is what amplifies I am the body belief, what amplifies the separate self. And so it's, the mind is always drawing us towards sense pleasures. And that's what causes more and more busyness in the mind. And so when the mind wants to be constantly stimulated, and we really experience this now in the tech age where everyone has a phone they're just glued to all the time. And it's like, I got to check my notifications every 2 minutes or something. That's the mind's belief in lack being utilized any which way it can, whether it's smoking, watching a YouTube video, checking my Instagram notifications. It's always creating a void of lack. I'm lacking fulfillment right now, as we call that boredom. And it just goes to one of those directions to get that fulfillment. So the first step out is to be able to see that the satisfaction of these sense pleasures creates more desire for sense pleasure. And
yeah, but sorry, after I've been doing it for a while, let's say I've been playing a computer game for several hours, right? I feel that pain behind the boredom is more intense.
Yes. Well said. I remember we talked about this a few months ago, how you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like if you give in to the desire to play video games to satisfy the boredom, then the part of ego that says my value depends on accomplishments and work and doing things, creating value, that part of the ego will protest and get upset at you for, slacking off for the last 2 hours. But if you had done this, then the boredom would have gotten worse. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
No, to clarify, I mean like after being distracted for several hours playing computer games. But yeah, it's true that if I did work, that might get boring. But there might be certain things that might not be.
Well, what I'm saying is,
okay, sorry.
What causes the feeling to get worse after a few hours of video games or YouTube videos is exactly that. It's another part of the ego's identity that's punishing you for ignoring what it wanted. So either decision you make, no matter what decision you give into the mind, it's sort of like a narcissistic abuser or something. Like it will never be satisfied. It will never actually give you the relief you want. It's always going to keep punishing you for something. Whether you're aware of that or not, it may just show up as some negative feeling of anxiety. You don't even know where it's coming from until you really dive in and do inquiry, right? But it is coming from another voice of the ego that is essentially guilt tripping you for not doing what you should have done or this or that. It's all doership showing up.
I've been feeling that if only I could just have another aha moment, because I get that. I've had that on these streams before. I want to somehow discover something going on beneath the surface.
And even the aha moments can become another form of sense pleasure the mind craves. And so we'll find ourselves diving into that textbook, like I did that with A Course in Miracles for a long time. I would use it to pacify my suffering, because many times I would open the course, read a passage, and then, instant relief. That was the concept I was missing, looking for, and it would satisfy me for a while. And then inevitably the mind comes back, the depression creeps back in, I go back to the course again, and over time that would begin to wear off to where the moment I open the course, the mind just starts throwing a huge fit. It's like, I already know what it's going to say. I've read this book before. It's not going to complete me. It doesn't work. And even reading the course became another form of suffering, because ultimately I was bypassing what was arising in the moment. And as you quoted from Eckhart, that's essentially what boredom is. It's just resistance to this moment, to what is. This moment's not good enough. Something better should be happening than what's happening now. So I'm going to give you an analogy to contextualize this. If you imagine the mind as a wheel, and the outside circumference of the wheel, if a wheel is turning, that's the fastest point on the wheel is the circumference on the outside, right? That has the most inertia. And the more you move inwards down the spokes, so to speak, picture a bike tire, the less momentum there is towards the center, right? Until we get to the middle and there's just stillness. The middle never moves, right? It's unchanging. So the Hindu tradition talks about this really important concept I've brought up a few times called the three gunas of the mind. The tamas guna is the circumference of the wheel. It's enormous inertia in the mind. So we call that like suffering, pain, anguish, resistance. When the mind is focused on the pain, the suffering, perversion, distortions, that's tamas guna. Now, rajas guna is the second one, and that is attention on objects, is the rajas guna. So the rajas guna can lead us towards the circumference or the center, depending on what the object of focus is. If I'm focusing on thoughts, beliefs, stories, the rajas guna is moving me farther from the middle, more towards the circumference, which means more inertia, more suffering, more pain. But if I turn my attention towards an object of meditation, let's say a mantra, or do the I am meditation, and you sink inwards towards the self, that object will pull you towards my true nature, where there's stillness. And that stillness, that purity of mind, or the silent mind, is the sattva guna. Sattva guna is purity, harmony, stillness, peace, bliss. That is our true nature. So on this wheel of the mind, you're either moving towards the circumference or the center, depending on what the object of focus is. So when we're accustomed to always focusing on these sense pleasures at the outside of the wheel, that's where the mind wants to go. We've trained it to go that direction. So the only way we can reverse that is to retrain the mind to desire stillness, to desire peace, to connect with my being. And that's why meditation is such an important practice, because only meditation really does that, moves us towards the sattva guna of stillness and peace. So what I would suggest you do is any moment there's that boredom, be aware of what the mind is doing. It's playing the same old trick, video games, smoking, YouTube. Something will satisfy me right now because this moment isn't good enough. So see it, and then purposefully just sit with it, and just sit in stillness in recognition of my mind thinks what I want is more sense pleasures, but what I really want is stillness. Just continually redirect the mind. I am the self. I am the self. I am the self. And that meditation on the self will move you inwards towards the middle of the wheel, the sattva guna. And what happens over time as we cultivate this practice, as I was just saying to Zenny, is that the mind will naturally begin to gravitate that direction. It'll become so perturbed by these stupid sense pleasures all the time that are just really annoyances at this point. I know they don't complete me. They just distract me from what's important. The mind will change its perception that way. But the important part is, because you're not the doer, the mind is, the mind will never change its mind of its own accord. Like, you have to do it through awareness. You have to recognize the problem. My attention is moving outwards, and what I want is the attention inwards. We call that presence or stillness. And then the mind will begin to reflect that back to you, and it becomes easier and easier to just be in that presence until eventually that presence actually becomes your bliss. It becomes the happiness, the relief you're looking for. And at any moment, no matter what's happening outside of you, you have that interior castle to retreat to and just experience the peace of my being, knowing that whatever's arising outside of me is ultimately an illusion. It's ultimately just a dance of energy. What I am is that presence. So the concept won't do it, right? Me saying it to you right now won't really do it. Reading it in books won't do it. You have to actually apply it in your experience. When that boredom shows up, that's the moment to dive inwards.
Okay, then, yeah. So when I'm feeling that boredom or suffering or of some kind, negative thoughts, I can just, like, use that for relief. With that, okay.
Yeah, easiest way
Thank you.
could be just, as soon as you become aware of it, oh, here's what the mind is doing. I see that. And then just go to the breath. Something to center you in the present moment. The breath is always the easiest access point. Just sit there and breathe. And really, it's going into that challenge that is where we find the relief from it. Like, embracing the obstacle is what actually removes the obstacle. Like, okay, my mind really is throwing a fit. It wants some sense pleasures, but I know for a fact they don't satisfy. So I'm going to let my mind throw that temper tantrum. Let it express, just let it get it all out. I'm so bored. I want to do all these things. And you just sit, breathe, be present, be still, be with what is, be here. And this meditation has a quieting effect on the mind. It will burn itself out of fuel very quickly. And just, again, remind yourself, what I want is stillness. What I want is peace of mind. And that can only come by joining myself with this moment, like the puzzle piece on the board, right? This moment is perfect. This moment is already offering me what I'm looking for. That's the best medicine for the mind.
All right. Thank you. That really helps.
Good. Glad to hear it. Thank you, Nicholas.